Welcome to the Story Lab. I hope you enjoy this story. Let's begin. The city skyline stretched before me, a testament to the empire Kristen and I had built. I adjusted my tie, straightening it before the floor-to-ceiling windows of our penthouse office. The view never failed to remind me of our success, our power. Christian, the Blackstone meeting starts in 10. Kristen's voice cut through my thoughts. I turned to face her, taking in her impeccable appearance. Her tailored suit hugged her curves, a subtle reminder of the attraction that had first drawn us together. Ready to crush them? I asked, a smirk playing on my lips. Kristen's eyes gleamed with the familiar predatory look I'd come to associate with our business dealings. Always. You've got the contracts? I patted my briefcase. Of course. They won't know what hit them. As we strode towards the elevator, our heels clicking in perfect sync on the marble floor, I couldn't help but feel a surge of pride. We were unstoppable, the ultimate power couple in a world that bowed to our whims. The ride down was silent, but charged with anticipation. This deal would cement our position at the top of the financial food chain. As the doors opened to the lobby, I placed my hand on the small of Kristen's back, guiding her forward. Mr. and Mrs. Moreno. Our receptionist greeted us with a nervous smile. Your car is waiting. I nodded curtly, not bothering with pleasantries. Time was money, and we had an empire to run. In the car, Kristen turned to me. We need to discuss the Peterson account after this meeting. What about it? I asked, my mind already racing through potential issues. They're getting cold feet. I think we need to apply some pressure. I grinned. This was why we worked so well together. I'll make some calls. By the time I'm done, they'll be begging us to take their money. Kristen's laugh was low and throaty. That's why I love you, Christian. You always know how to get what we want. As our car pulled up to the Blackstone building, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Kristen's smile didn't quite reach her eyes, and there was a tension in her shoulders that hadn't been there before. Everything all right? I asked, my hand on the door handle. She blinked, her mask of confidence slipping back into place. Of course. Let's go make some money. We stepped out onto the sidewalk, a united front against the world. But as we walked into the building, I couldn't help but wonder if the cracks in our facade were starting to show. The meeting room was all polished wood and leather, the scent of power and money hanging thick in the air. As we took our seats, I watched Kristen charm the room with practiced ease. But there was something missing in her performance, a spark that had always set her apart. Mr. Moreno, your reputation precedes you, Mr. Blackstone said, his eyes darting between Kristen and me. I hope we can come to a mutually beneficial arrangement. I leaned forward, my smile sharp. Mr. Blackstone, I assure you, by the time we're done here, you'll wonder how you ever did business without us. As the negotiations began, I pushed my doubts aside. We had an empire to maintain, and nothing would stand in our way. Not even the growing distance I felt between Kristen and myself. The restaurant hummed with the quiet murmur of the city's elite, crystal glasses clinking and silverware scraping against fine china. I loosened my tie slightly, feeling the pressure of the high-stakes dinner weighing on my shoulders. Christian, darling, you haven't touched your wine. Kristen's voice carried a hint of tension beneath its silky smoothness. I lifted the glass to my lips, taking a small sip. Just focusing on the task at hand, dear. The Weston merger won't close itself. Kristen's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Always business with you, isn't it? Before I could respond, a new voice cut through our conversation. Kristen Moreno, as stunning as ever. And you must be the infamous Christian. I turned to face the newcomer, instantly wary. Bradley Carter, the rising star of the tech world, stood before us with a charming smile that set my teeth on edge. Bradley, I nodded curtly. I wasn't aware you were involved in this deal. He laughed, the sound grating on my nerves. Oh, I'm not. Just happened to be dining here tonight. Mind if I join you for a drink? I opened my mouth to decline, but Kristen beat me to it. We'd be delighted. Wouldn't we, Christian? Her tone left no room for argument. I gestured to an empty chair, watching as Bradley took a seat entirely too close to my wife. So, tell me about your latest venture, Bradley. Kristen leaned in, her eyes sparkling with interest. I've heard whispers, but I'd love to hear it from the source. Bradley's grin widened. Well, I never could resist a beautiful woman asking for secrets. But quid pro quo, Kristen. I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I clenched my jaw, the innuendo not lost on me. I'm sure Bradley doesn't want to be bored with the details of corporate law, dear. On the contrary, Bradley countered, his eyes never leaving Kristen. I find everything about your wife fascinating. The conversation flowed, with Kristen and Bradley exchanging ideas and thinly veiled flirtations. I sat back, watching the dance unfold before me. The way Kristen laughed at his jokes, the casual touches, the heated glances. It was all too familiar. I'd seen her work her charm on countless business associates before, but this felt different. Personal. Christian, honey, could you grab my wrap? I'm feeling a bit chilly. Kristen's request pulled me from my thoughts. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor. Of course. Don't discuss anything too exciting while I'm gone. As I walked away, I heard Bradley's low voice. Now that the watchdog's gone, why don't you tell me what you really think about the Anderson proposal? I paused, just out of sight, listening to Kristen's response. It's garbage, and Christian knows it, but he's too cautious to make a move. And what would you do if you were calling the shots? Bradley pressed. There was a moment of silence before Kristen spoke, her voice filled with a passion I hadn't heard in years. I'd tear it apart and rebuild it from the ground up, create something revolutionary. Now that, Bradley said, his tone heavy with admiration, is the kind of thinking that changes the world. Have you ever considered branching out on your own? I'd heard enough. I grabbed Kristen's wrap and returned to the table, plastering on a smile that felt more like a grimace. Here you are, darling. I hope I didn't interrupt anything important. Kristen's eyes met mine, a flicker of guilt passing through them before she looked away. Not at all. Bradley was just telling me about his new project. It's fascinating stuff. I'm sure it is, I replied, my tone clipped. But we should really be focusing on the Weston deal. That's why we're here, after all. Bradley stood, smoothing down his jacket. Of course, I wouldn't want to keep you from business. Kristen, it was an absolute pleasure. I hope we can continue our discussion another time. He handed her a business card, his fingers lingering on hers a moment too long. My private number's on the back, for when you're ready to change the world. As Bradley walked away, I turned to Kristen, my anger barely contained. What the hell was that? She met my gaze defiantly. That, Christian, was someone who actually values my opinion. When was the last time you asked for my input on anything other than what tie to wear? Her words hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to argue, but the arrival of our clients cut me short. As we dove back into business talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The cracks in our perfect facade were widening, and I was powerless to stop it. The penthouse was silent as I entered, the only sound the soft click of the door closing behind me. It was late, another night of poring over contracts and building cases, but something else had kept me at the office, a nagging suspicion that refused to be ignored. Kristen? I called out, my voice echoing through the empty rooms. No response. I loosened my tie, tossing my briefcase onto the couch as I made my way to the bedroom. The bed was perfectly made, untouched. A quick glance at my watch confirmed it was well past midnight. Where was she? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my private investigator. Check your email. You need to see this. With a growing sense of dread, I pulled out my laptop and opened the encrypted message. Photos filled the screen, each one a dagger to my heart. Kristen and Bradley, leaving a hotel. Kristen in Bradley's car, her head thrown back in laughter. Their hands entwined across a restaurant table. My vision blurred, rage and hurt battling for dominance. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? The sound of keys in the door jolted me back to reality. I quickly closed the laptop, composing myself as Kristen's heels clicked on the marble floor. Christian? You're home early. Her voice carried a note of surprise and something else. Guilt? I turned to face her, taking in her slightly disheveled appearance. Late night at the office? She nodded, avoiding my gaze as she slipped off her shoes. The Morrison case is giving me hell. I needed to review some files. Funny, I said, my tone deceptively light. I was just at the office. Didn't see you there. Kristen froze, her back to me. I was in the law library. You know how I like the quiet when I'm working. I stood, moving closer. Is that so? And I suppose Bradley Carter was helping you with your legal research? She spun around, her eyes wide with shock. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb, Kristen. It doesn't suit you. I spat, my calm facade crumbling. I know about the affair. How long has it been going on? Weeks? Months? Kristen's shock gave way to defiance. And what if it has? You haven't really looked at me in years. It's always about the next deal, the next victory. When was the last time you asked me what I wanted? Her words stung, but I pushed the pain aside. So you decided to fuck the competition? Real classy, Kristen. Did you even think about what this could do to our reputation? To our business? Is that all you care about? She shouted, tears welling in her eyes. The precious Moreno empire? What about us, Christian? What about our marriage? I laughed bitterly. Our marriage? The one you've been making a mockery of? Tell me, does Bradley know about your little indiscretion with the Peterson account? Or did you conveniently leave that out during your pillow talk? Kristen paled, taking a step back. How did you? I know everything, Kristen. Every dirty little secret, every lie. Did you really think you could hide it from me? I advanced on her, my voice low and dangerous. I built this empire. I made you who you are. And this is how you repay me? She straightened, her chin lifting in defiance. You didn't make me, Christian. I was always more than just your trophy wife. Bradley sees that. He values my ideas, my ambition. Oh, I'm sure he does, I sneered. I'm sure he's very interested in your assets. Tell me, does he know about the offshore accounts? The shell companies? Or were you planning to take him for a ride too? Kristen's eyes widened in fear. You wouldn't dare. If I go down, you go down with me. I smiled coldly. Are you sure about that? I've been very careful, dear. Can you say the same? She lunged for her purse, probably reaching for her phone, but I was faster. I grabbed her wrist, my grip tight enough to make her gasp. I don't think so. You're not calling your little boy toy for help, I growled. This ends now. Kristen struggled against my grip. Let go of me. You're hurting me. I released her, watching as she stumbled back. Get out. Pack your things and get out of my house. Christian, please. Her voice broke, the fight draining out of her. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. Start over. There is no fixing this. I cut her off. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. I've already called my lawyer. Expect divorce papers in the morning. And Kristen? I'd start looking for a good criminal defense attorney if I were you. You're going to need one. You can't do this to me, Christian, she screamed, her face contorted with rage and fear. I stood my ground, my voice cold and steady. I already have. Your access to our accounts has been revoked. The credit cards are frozen. You're cut off, Kristen. She lunged for her purse, frantically digging for her wallet. You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare. Try it, I challenged. Go ahead, call the bank. See what they say. Kristen's hands shook as she dialed, her eyes never leaving mine. I watched as the color drained from her face, satisfaction coursing through me. This is a mistake. She stammered into the phone. I'm Kristen Moreno. There must be some error with my account. I could hear the apologetic tone of the bank representative even from where I stood. Kristen's voice rose in pitch, desperation setting in. No, you don't understand. I need access to those funds. Now. They won't help you, I said, crossing my arms. No one will. She threw the phone across the room, advancing on me with clenched fists. You bastard. How am I supposed to live? Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged, unmoved by her outburst. That's not my problem anymore. You made your bed with Bradley. Now you can lie in it. Bradley, she breathed, a flicker of hope crossing her face. He'll help me. He'll what? I cut her off. Sweep you off your feet? Rescue you from the big bad husband? I laughed bitterly. Wake up, Kristen. Men like Bradley don't want used goods. Her hand flew, striking me across the face. The slap echoed in the sudden silence. Get out, I growled, grabbing her wrist before she could hit me again. Get your things and get out of my house. Kristen wrenched her arm free, tears streaming down her face. This isn't over, Christian. You can't just throw me away like yesterday's trash. I helped build this empire. I moved to the door, holding it open. And now you'll watch it crush you. Goodbye, Kristen. As she stormed past me, suitcase in hand, I called after her. Oh, and expect divorce papers in the morning. I'd start looking for a good lawyer if I were you. The door slammed, leaving me alone in the wreckage of our life together. I poured myself a drink, my mind already racing with plans for revenge. My phone buzzed a message from my private investigator. Got the dirt on Carter. It's worse than we thought. A cold smile spread across my face. I dialed a number, waiting as it rang. John? It's Christian Moreno. Remember that favor you owe me? I'm calling it in. I need you to start a whisper campaign. As I outlined my plan, I felt a familiar thrill. The game was on, and I intended to destroy them both. The boardroom fell silent as I entered, all eyes turning to me. I straightened my tie, a predatory smile playing on my lips. Gentlemen, I nodded, taking my seat at the head of the table. Let's begin. Mr. Moreno, one of the board members, James, cleared his throat. We've been hearing rumors about Bradley Carter's company. I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Oh, what kind of rumors? Another board member, Sarah, leaned forward. Insider trading, cooked books, even whispers of embezzlement. Is there any truth to this? I spread my hands, the picture of concerned innocence. I can't speak to the veracity of these claims, but as a major investor in several of Carter's ventures, I'm deeply troubled by what I'm hearing. The room erupted in murmurs. I let the tension build before speaking again. Of course, we shouldn't jump to conclusions, but perhaps it would be prudent to reevaluate our partnerships with Carter Industries. James nodded vigorously. Absolutely. We can't risk being associated with a sinking ship. What about Kristen? Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing. She's been pushing for increased collaboration with Carter. Is she aware of these allegations? I sighed, letting a flicker of pain cross my face. I'm afraid Kristen and I are taking some time apart. Her judgment may be compromised at the moment. The room fell silent again, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Christian, James said softly, if there's anything we can do. I waved him off, straightening in my chair. Your concern is appreciated, but unnecessary. Now, let's discuss how we're going to protect our interests in light of this Carter situation. As the meeting progressed, I watched my carefully planted seeds of doubt take root. By the time we adjourned, the board was chomping at the bit to distance themselves from Bradley and his company. Leaving the boardroom, I bumped into my assistant, Emily. Sir, she said, her voice low. That package you were waiting for? It's arrived. I nodded, following her to my office. On my desk sat an unmarked envelope. Inside, I found exactly what I'd been waiting for: irrefutable evidence of Kristen's past indiscretions. Emily, I called. Get me Robert Chin on the phone. It's time to move to phase 2. As I waited for the call to connect, I spread out the documents before me. Kristen's fraudulent deal, the falsified records, the money trail. It was all there. Robert, I said when he picked up, remember that story you've been chasing? I've got something that might interest you. By the time I hung up, the wheels were in motion. Soon, Kristen's carefully constructed facade would come crashing down around her. My phone buzzed a text from Kristen. We need to talk. Please, Christian, give me a chance to explain. I deleted the message without replying. There was nothing left to say. The headlines screamed across every major financial news outlet. Moreno Empire rocked by scandal. I tossed the newspaper aside, a grim satisfaction settling in my chest. My phone hadn't stopped ringing since the story broke. I ignored it, pouring myself a drink as I watched the chaos unfold on the financial news channel. In a shocking turn of events, the anchor's voice filled the room. Kristen Moreno, wife of business mogul Christian Moreno, has been implicated in a massive fraud scheme dating back years. Sources close to the investigation claim that millions of dollars were funneled through offshore accounts. A knock at the door interrupted the broadcast. I muted the TV, calling out, "Come in." Emily entered, her face pale. "Sir, the board is demanding an emergency meeting, and Kristen's here. She's insisting on seeing you." I downed my drink, setting the glass aside. "Tell the board I'll be there in an hour." As for Kristen, I paused, considering. "Send her in." Emily nodded, disappearing back into the hallway. Moments later, Kristen burst into the room, a whirlwind of desperation and fury. "What have you done?" she screamed, advancing on me. "Do you have any idea what you've unleashed?" I met her gaze coolly. "I've done exactly what I said I would. I've destroyed you, Kristen, just like you tried to destroy me." She laughed, a hysterical edge to the sound. "Destroy you? Is that what you think this was about? I loved you, Christian. I just wanted to be seen, to be valued. And Bradley made you feel valued, did he?" I sneered. "Tell me, how does it feel to be used and discarded? Because that's exactly what he's done." Kristen's face crumpled. "Bradley, he won't return my calls. His company's tanking, and he said it was my fault, that I've ruined him." "Oh, it is your fault," I confirmed, a cruel smile playing on my lips. "You chose to betray me, to risk everything we built. Actions have consequences, Kristen." She sank into a chair, her shoulders shaking with sobs. "What am I supposed to do now? My career is over. Our friends, our partners, they're all abandoning ship." I shrugged, unmoved by her tears. "That's not my problem anymore. You made your choices. Now you get to live with them." Kristen looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but filled with a sudden determination. "I'll fight this. I'll tell them it was all you, that you set me up." "With what proof?" I cut her off. "Every piece of evidence points to you, Kristen. Your signatures, your accounts, your deals. Face it, you're finished." She stood abruptly, her voice shaking with rage. "This isn't over, Christian. You might have won this round, but I swear, You'll what?" I interrupted, my tone icy. "Go to the press? Try to salvage what's left of your reputation? Good luck with that. By the time I'm done, there won't be a single person in this city willing to so much as look at you." Kristen's face paled, the fight draining out of her. "Christian, please. We can fix this. We can start over. Rebuild." "There is no we anymore," I said flatly. "Get out of my office. Get out of my life. If you're smart, you'll leave town before the authorities come knocking." She stared at me for a long moment, searching for any sign of the man she once knew. Finding none, she turned and walked out, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closed behind her, I turned back to the muted TV. Bradley's face filled the screen, his company's stock price plummeting in real time beside him. I unmuted the volume, catching the tail end of a reporter's question. "Any comment on the allegations of insider trading and market manipulation?" Bradley's usual charm was nowhere to be seen as he stammered through a response. These claims are baseless. Carter Industries has always operated with the utmost integrity. We categorically deny any wrongdoing and are cooperating fully with the authorities to clear our name." I chuckled darkly, raising my glass in a mock toast to the screen. "Enjoy your fall from grace, Bradley. You're going to wish you'd never heard the name Moreno." My intercom buzzed. Emily's voice came through, tense and professional. "Sir, the board is assembled and waiting." I straightened my tie, slipping back into the role of the wronged husband and business leader. It was time to cement my position and ensure that I emerged from this scandal not just unscathed, but stronger than ever. As I walked towards the boardroom, I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. The game wasn't over yet, but I was winning, and I intended to see it through to its bitter end. The incessant ringing of my phone pierced through the silence of my office. I glanced at the caller ID, Kristen. Again. With a sigh, I picked up. "What do you want, Kristen?" Her voice came through, desperate and pleading. "Christian, please. We need to talk. Face to face. Give me one last chance." I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache coming on. There's nothing left to say. There's everything left to say, she exclaimed. Our whole life together. Our business, are you really willing to throw it all away? I laughed bitterly. That's rich coming from you. Weren't you the one who threw it all away for a fling with Bradley? There was a pause on the other end. Then, softly, I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But Christian, what you're doing, it's destroying everything we built. No, Kristen, you destroyed it. I'm just picking up the pieces. Then let me help you, she pleaded. Let me make it right. We can rebuild, start over. I cut her off. There is no we anymore. It's over, Kristen. Christian, please. Her voice broke. Just meet with me. 1 hour, that's all I'm asking. For old time's sake. I closed my eyes, weighing my options. Finally, I spoke. Fine. 1 hour. My office, tomorrow at 2 p.m. And Kristen? Don't be late. I hung up before she could respond, turning to stare out the window at the city skyline. My empire. My creation. And now, my weapon. The next day, at precisely 2 p.m., Kristen walked into my office. Gone was the confident, polished executive. In her place stood a woman on the brink, her eyes red-rimmed and her clothes slightly disheveled. Christian, she breathed, taking a step towards me. I held up a hand, stopping her. Sit down, Kristen. You wanted to talk, so talk. She sank into the chair across from me, her hands twisting in her lap. I know I hurt you. What I did was unforgivable. But Christian, this vendetta, it's gone too far. You're not just hurting me, you're hurting yourself, our friends, our business partners, Our business partners? I interrupted, my voice sharp. You mean the ones you were willing to defraud? The ones whose trust you betrayed? Kristen flinched. I made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But I'm willing to face the consequences. I'll turn myself in, confess everything. Just stop this madness. Please. I leaned back in my chair, studying her. And why would I do that? Why should I show you any mercy when you showed me none? Because you're better than this, she said softly. The Christian I married, the man I fell in love with, he wouldn't destroy everything out of spite. I felt a flicker of something, regret, doubt, but I pushed it aside. The man you married died the day you betrayed him. This is who I am now, Kristen, and I'm going to see this through to the end. She stood abruptly, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and desperation. And what about Bradley? Are you going to destroy him too? I smiled coldly. Bradley made his choices, just like you did. Now you both get to live with the consequences. Kristen moved towards the door, then paused, turning back to me. Is this really what you want, Christian? To be alone at the top of a crumbling empire? I met her gaze steadily. Better alone than betrayed. She shook her head, a tear sliding down her cheek. You're wrong, and someday you'll realize it. I just hope it's not too late. As the door closed behind her, I turned back to my computer, pulling up the files I'd been compiling. It was time to deliver the final blow. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took my seat. Across the aisle, Kristen sat with her lawyer, her face a mask of resigned defeat. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. In the case of the state versus Kristen Moreno, how does the defendant plead? Kristen's lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client pleads. Wait. Kristen interrupted, standing abruptly. I want to change my plea. Her lawyer turned to her, hissing urgently. Kristen, what are you doing? We discussed this, but Kristen's eyes were fixed on me as she spoke. I plead guilty, Your Honor, to all charges. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. I sat, frozen, as Kristen continued. I've done terrible things. I've betrayed the trust of my husband, my business partners, and everyone who believed in me. I'm here to take responsibility for my actions. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order. Ms. Moreno, are you aware of the consequences of changing your plea? Kristen nodded, her voice steady. I am, Your Honor, and I'm prepared to face them. As the proceedings continued, I found myself unable to look away from Kristen. This wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to fight, to deny everything. This This act of contrition threw everything into chaos. Outside the courtroom, I was ambushed by reporters. Mr. Moreno, how do you feel about your wife's confession? Will this affect the ongoing investigations into your company? I pushed past them, my mind reeling. In my office, I found an unexpected visitor waiting for me. Bradley, I growled, my hand clenching into a fist. He looked up, his once charming face now haggard and drawn. Christian, I suppose I should thank you. I paused, thrown off guard. Thank me? For what? Bradley laughed bitterly. For opening my eyes. For showing me what I'd become. He stood, facing me. I'm turning myself in. All of it the insider trading, the market manipulation. I'm done running. I stared at him, speechless. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. They were supposed to fall, yes, but not like this. Not with dignity. Bradley moved towards the door, then stopped. You know, Christian, I envy you. Even after everything, Kristen still loves you. She did all this, the confession, taking the fall to protect you. Protect me? I scoffed. From what? He smiled sadly. From yourself. With that, he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sank into my chair, pulling out the file I'd prepared for the authorities. The final nail in Kristen and Bradley's coffins. But now, looking at it, I felt nothing but emptiness. My phone buzzed a message from my lawyer. Bradley Carter just turned himself in. Confessed to everything. What do you want to do? I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the reply button. The choice was mine. Redemption or ruin. In that moment, I realized the true cost of my revenge. The gavel fell with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. Kristen Moreno, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison. I watched as Kristen was led away in handcuffs, her head held high despite everything. Our eyes met for a brief moment, and I saw not hatred or anger, but a profound sadness. Outside, the media frenzy was in full swing. Cameras flashed as I made my way to the waiting car. Mr. Moreno, how does it feel to see your wife convicted? Any comments on Bradley Carter's confession? What's next for Moreno Enterprises? I ignored them all, sliding into the back seat and signaling the driver to go. As we pulled away, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. The face that stared back at me was victorious, but hollow. Back at the office, Emily met me with a stack of reports. Sir, the board is waiting for your decision on the Carter Industries acquisition. I nodded absently, my mind elsewhere. Tell them I'll have an answer by tomorrow. And sir, she hesitated, there's a letter for you. From Mrs. Moreno. I took the envelope, dismissing Emily with a wave. Alone in my office, I stared at Kristen's familiar handwriting for a long moment before opening it. Christian, by the time you read this, I'll be starting my sentence. I want you to know that I don't blame you. What I did was unforgivable, and I accept the consequences of my actions. But Christian, I worry about you. This anger, this need for revenge, it's consuming you. The man I married, the man I fell in love with, he's still in there somewhere. I hope you can find him again. I'm sorry for everything, for betraying your trust, for risking everything we built. But most of all, I'm sorry for breaking your heart. You deserved better. Take care of yourself, Christian, and remember, even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for redemption.
Always Kristen.
I set the letter down, a lump forming in my throat. Outside my window, the city sprawled before me, a testament to everything I'd achieved. My empire stood intact, stronger than ever. But at what cost? My phone rang. Bradley's lawyer. I answered, my voice gruff. What is it? Mr. Moreno, in light of recent events, my client would like to make a deal. He's willing to testify about certain irregularities in your past dealings. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. What kind of irregularities? The lawyer's voice was smooth, professional. Oh, you know, the kind that could bring down an empire. Mr. Carter feels he has nothing left to lose. Do you? As the implications of his words sank in, I realized the true price of my victory. In my quest for revenge, I'd left myself vulnerable. The very weapons I'd used against Kristen and Bradley could now be turned on me. I hung up without answering, my mind racing. The empire I'd fought so hard to protect now felt like a cage. I'd won the battle, but at what cost? My wife was in prison. My reputation hung by a thread, and the vultures were circling. As night fell over the city, I stood alone in my office, the weight of my choices pressing down on me. I'd emerged victorious, yes, but as I looked out at the glittering lights of the city I once ruled, I realized that my triumph had come at the cost of everything that truly mattered. In the end, I was left with nothing but a hollow victory and the bitter taste of regret. The game was over, and though I'd won, I'd never felt more defeated. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.